Hmm. Tom, Emily, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
No, thank you. My pleasure. So listen, I'm really looking forward to the chat. I've already talked to the two people in what's the handle? What's the Twitter handle?
Two people in paradise. We saw
Exactly. Yeah,
that.
two people.
Yes.
I always forget the
Yeah,
Twitter
our
handle.
friends here.
Exactly. And they gave me their inspiring story and very empowering, very encouraging. So I'm doing a series of talks, with people like you, coincidentally, you're also now from Canada. But yeah, again, the reason I want to talk to you about this is that me, my girlfriend, and our now 2-year-old daughter, she had birthday yesterday. We are planning to seriously pack our stuff when this whole shit got serious in Austria with vaccine. They repealed the law already, but as you know, they wanted to sort of force vaccinate the people. And I want to, also have your take, Emily, because you've been fired, as a nurse, right, in Canada.
Yes.
I also want to know your take, your general position, because my general position on vaccination changed dramatically after this, because I wasn't like anti-vax at all. I have like 3 vax passes for general, vaccinations, because I went back and forth to United States and Austria and have like so many vaccinations. I mean, I'm sometimes I wonder why I'm still alive, but anyway. Anyway, so why don't you just go ahead, either Tom, Emily, tell us your story, and then we can go, deeper down the rabbit hole.
So, yeah, it's interesting that you would say that about vaccines, because I feel the same way. Like I've always been, in my 20s, I traveled all around the world, probably 30 countries, and I got all kinds of vaccines in order to do that. And, we had our children vaccinated. Our oldest is 9 now, and we have 3, and they're all up to date on their shots. And yet, in the last couple of years, our views of vaccines has dramatically changed.
Well, I would say we're questioning things
at
that we
least-
didn't question before.
Yeah, we started questioning a lot more about pharmaceuticals and, what the agenda really is and how safe these things really are and that sort of thing.
But yeah, so to tell our story, because probably a lot of your listeners or viewers don't know who we are. So we were sort of I guess a typical Canadian family living in British Columbia, Canada, so on the West Coast. We were in the northern part in a relatively small city, Prince George, which has about 90,000 people. It's 800 kilometers north of Vancouver. And we had a great life there. We owned our own home with almost half an acre, big yard. We loved the place. We loved our home. We had big gardens and playground in the back for our kids, and they loved that house. And we had our kids in a fantastic school,
private school.
Yeah, that we loved, and we had a great community of family and friends, and so we had no reason to want to leave prior to COVID. We hadn't even really been thinking about it. We'd always want to take our kids traveling, but the thought of just moving out of Canada wasn't even on the radar really at the time. But yeah, so then I guess then COVID started, and we kind of went along. We're not sure what to think, and so we took the same precautions that most people did. And I still remember leaving my Amazon orders or grocery bags outside for a little while, because I'd read that helps like the COVID go away before you bring them in the house and things like that. And it sounds ridiculous now thinking about it.
Yeah, and I remember going to work as a nurse because I was caring for the elderly in a nursing home. I remember just having so much fear that I would be bringing COVID into my workplace, or that I might be bringing it back to my family, because the fear mongering was very strong at the time.
But so yeah, I mean, a few months into it, or maybe less time than that, we really started to question things, and things weren't adding up to us. And so like once the vaccine stuff started to roll out, and I just thought right away, well, I'm going to be the last person to get this thing because I'm at low risk. I'd read the statistics for men under 40, and I just thought, well, I'll other people can get this, and I'm just going to wait and see. And I didn't think anything nefarious at the time, but then when, like Canadian politicians were saying, we're not going to mandate this, we're not going to bring in discriminatory vaccine passports, like our prime minister and our chief health officer for our province both said they weren't going to do that. And then, so that was in the spring of 2021, but by the summer of 2021, it started to get pretty dark in Canada. And I know what you mentioned about Austria. I remember reading the article that they were talking about jail time for people who refused it, which was incredibly scary. And we thought that was going to come to Canada too. They were running polls, like the mainstream media in Canada was having polls asking Canadians, what should we do with the unvaccinated? And the options were deny them health care, put them in jail, or I think it was, or nothing. And so they were inciting fear and anger towards people who, made a different medical choice. And it was a scary time in Canada for sure. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, they kept saying, if you're not vaccinated, you're going to spread the virus. You're a super spreader. They put labels on us, and you're selfish. You're not thinking about the whole. You're not thinking about great grandma that could die if you bring the virus to her. Even if you don't have symptoms, you could spread it if you don't take this vaccine, right?
But yeah, so I mean, I feel like I don't want to go too in the weeds on COVID, because we all know, I think all your viewers know about COVID, but like Canada basically went crazy. By the summer of 2021, it was in full swing. Like we were at protests in Canada, freedom rallies and protests against the healthcare workers being fired for not getting the vaccine. And so we were there fighting this, and we could see that the tide was like overwhelmingly against us. And that it was just, this tidal wave was just coming, and we just had to get out of the way. And we saw that, they were bringing in, they were firing Emily. They were bringing in these vaccine passports so that we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't take our kids to any activities or restaurants or anything like that. And then we're going to be denied public transportation and also locked into our own country, unable to leave, which was the scariest thing of all, right? Prisoners in your own country.
But it was also really hard, having 3 little girls and telling them all the time why they couldn't do normal things, like, go to the public swimming pool or sign up for dance class or, their normal skating lessons. All the things that they enjoyed were being taken away from them. And it was just breaking our hearts. Well, we had to tell them these things every day. And even getting invited to a birthday party where only vaccinated parents could bring the children to this birthday party.
Yeah, and I mean, we were being vilified, not only by the government and the media, but even family and friends. Some turned against.
This is the most traumatizing thing I've seen and observed and experienced. We all. I mean. I was going to also ask you, like, because you have 3 wonderful children, like daughters, right? We have 1 daughter. So like but you already answered that, like how did they experience it, this whole environment? It's mind-boggling. The psychological, emotional, and I don't know, maybe even physical, psychosomatic, consequences because of these measures or dictatorial measures. It's mind-boggling. It's really mind-boggling.
It is. I think it was a bit traumatic for them, like, because they were going to school and, it started, like, this is over a year ago now. It started where, their classmates were talking about how, my mommy and daddy are vaccinated. Are your mommy and daddy? Because if they're not safe, and that kind of stuff.
But I would say that, like, the first 2 years, like from whatever, March 2020 or a year and a half to summer of 2021, although it was difficult, everyone was more or less being treated the same. It was when that division started to be created, where there's like 2 classes of citizens, right? There's the ones who did the right thing, and there's the bad ones, right? The evil ones, and who don't care and who aren't willing to do what it takes for the greater good, and all these sort of things that were said about us. That's when it became really difficult, right? Because as long as everyone was banned from going to restaurants, it wasn't so hard to explain to our children. We could say, we don't agree with this, but these are the policies, these are the rules for everyone right now. But when it became, we're not allowed to go to any of these places because of our choice, then and it was put on us, and we were told, like, well, it's your own choice. You're choosing to lose your job. You're choosing to be banned from restaurants because you're making the wrong choice. And it was amazing how people were able to justify that. And that's when it became really difficult for me to, like, explain to our daughters that like, how can I explain to them that this makes sense? And we couldn't justify this to them. And that's why we began to put the bug in their ear early, that we wanted to take them traveling. We wanted to take them around the world. I remember buying a world map, and my oldest daughter and I, we would like put stickers on the map of all the places we wanted to visit. And so we started to build up this excitement about leaving Canada, because we knew already in early summer 2021 that this was a possibility. And so that helped, I think, because they would ask all the time, when are we going to go on our trip around the world? When are we going to do this? And
it was actually a dream of ours to take our kids traveling, especially to Latin America. So this had always been a dream of ours.
I mean, we didn't expect it to happen the way it did.
We just always had excuses like, oh, we have a house. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess to finish our sort of story of how we ended up leaving Canada was there's a few things, but basically there was an election in Canada in September 2021. We were hopeful that the government would change and that things might change course. That didn't happen. And so we saw that the current Prime Minister could be in power for another 4 years. And he had already vilified us and threatened to take away our right to leave the country. And so right after that, it was like, okay, we seriously need to look at leaving. But we weren't fully ready yet. I was ready, I think, but Emily wasn't fully on board yet. And because of that, I felt this huge weight, that if I were to like drag her out of Canada, sell our home, pull our kids out of school, all this, give up our life there, our security, that if it went wrong, that she would hold it against me. And I felt all this weight and pressure in that way. And I felt like I needed to have her on board. And so although I was reading about, life in Mexico and Central America, I was following all these Bitcoiners and other freedom-minded individuals on Twitter who had made the move from different developed countries to Central America. And I was contacting them, asking them, and I was convinced that we should do this. But again, I wasn't going to drag her against her will. And then so yeah, then some things happened, and I guess I'll let Emily explain how she came to the decision that, she was ready to go.
Yeah, it was probably about a week or two before I was going to be losing my job, based on my choice. And they were testing us every day at work. And, if we weren't vaccinated, we had to take the test. And anyways, I just prayed, God, you have to give me a sign if we're supposed to leave and go to Mexico, because I need to know if this is the right move, And the very next day after I prayed that, I was talking to just a lady in the health food store, and she mentioned that some friends of hers had left Canada, sold everything, left Canada, and were living in Mexico, and that they were really happy there. And
one important point that Emily forgot to mention was the lady she spoke to at the store was secretly unvaxxed, but afraid to tell people. And she was whispering, like she's afraid for anyone to hear. Like, this is what Canada had become.
Yes.
People were whispering and afraid to have conversations out in the open.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought I'd mention.
Even if that ain't like the proof, like, history repeating like in the 30s, but people don't learn out of history, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad.
But after that
and
conversation,
also like, just as a side note, I had been watching my coworkers who desperately did not want to take this experimental thing, just dropping like flies because of needing to keep their job, needing to keep the food on the table and the mortgage paid. And so many of them
We're coerced.
wanted, so some of them even tried to find other jobs, but nothing, that would pay as well as being a nurse. And so they felt like they had no other choice. And I was very sad. And I guess for me and also for Tom, we realized if our government is going to take away people's jobs, what are they going to do next?
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was a
That's a
scary
lot.
thought.
Yeah.
We thought it could go down the road of them taking our kids from us.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's funny that people in Canada will say, "Oh, that's irrational," but I mean, people who say got the vaccine and didn't face this discrimination will think that we're being irrational. But the truth is that we were in that dark of a place when the mainstream media is running polls of should we jail the unvaxxed or deny them healthcare. Like they were talking about banning us from grocery stores even. Denying healthcare, denying life-saving surgeries, all these
Healthcare
kinds of
was
things.
starting to be denied. Even like there was a walk-in clinic in our city that
Wouldn't take us.
they wouldn't take unvaccinated people already in September of 2021.
Yeah.
And so it was already seeping in different ways. So
Yeah, and so where were we? So Emily had this, she felt like she got this sign that we were meant to go, and there was another sign too, but she came downstairs when I was working, and she basically like sort of like grabbed me by the shirt collar and was like, "We need to do this. We need to go." And this was like October 8th, I believe it was, around there, and 2021. And they had just announced that they're gonna put in a travel ban at the end of October 30th. We were gonna not be allowed to fly. And there's like a 1 month gray area where we might be able to with a PCR test, but we didn't know for sure for November. But we were like, we got to get out before the end of October. So after Emily sort of grabbed me by the shirt collar and was like, "We need to do this," I was like, okay, that weight is gone. That pressure of that burden, feeling like I'm taking all this on myself. I was like, okay, she's on board with me. We're in this together. And then after that, I was like, okay, let's go. Let's list the house. Let's call the realtor. Let's book the plane tickets. And then the dominoes just started to fall. And within, 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks, we had sold our home. We had sold our car. We had sold a quarter of our possessions. Had everything arranged. We had plane tickets booked, a place to stay in Mexico when we got there. And so
you also lost your job.
Yeah. And so that's something important to mention to people, because I think there's a lot of people watching who are saying like, well, I would do that too if I could work remotely and if I could, find a way to support myself. Well, I mean, I am an accountant by trade, so it helps. But I had to give up my job when we left. Emily was fired. The company I was working for said they couldn't keep me on if I left the country. And I accepted that. They were very good to me. I didn't have any hard feelings. It wasn't a COVID related decision. It was just, our company policies don't allow you to work from another country. So, but when we left, we had no income. We had no job security. We had no idea how we were going to make it work. We just knew that it was so important to us that we would find a way. And I think that's important for people listening to know, is that if you're in a developing country and you see how bad things are getting there, which I think a lot of people do, and they're thinking about leaving, it's not going to be easy. There's no person coming who's going to offer you $100,000 a year job in El Salvador, and that's going to make it so easy for you to move, and that you're going to find the perfect house that's going to be waiting for you there at the perfect price. And it's not going to work out magically. Like, you're going to have to make difficult decisions. You're going to have to decide, do you value your job security, your career, your pension plan, your retirement savings, your house in wherever you're living, or do you value your personal freedom and all that comes with that? And so for us, it was like, we value our personal freedom and the freedom to raise our children the way we want to, so much that we were willing to walk away from all that. And it's been a very costly decision financially, but also like emotionally, in terms of walking away from relationships, family, friends.
I think a lot, maybe for women more than men, possibly. I think it's hard with like the social aspect. You know, leaving your social network behind can be very challenging, and it has been for me. Because you're not going to keep those relationships the same as they were when you're back in Canada and you could see all those people every few days or whatever. You can't go for walks with your friends back home anymore, and you might not be able to keep up with all of them, right? And you can't necessarily. And I think that for, some of our friends and family back home who are thinking about leaving, it's really hard because they have elderly parents, or, that they feel that they need to look after, and different ties, like they're close with their good friends or siblings or whoever it is. And so that can be a really hard aspect to leaving as well. But you also have to ask yourself, like Tom said, what do I value the most? And for us, we had to think about our children's future and our family's freedom,
Now, I'm still having a hard time, to be honest with you. I mean, not only me, but lots of people that or we know, to digest this reality, reflect upon this reality, because, until not such a long time ago, let's say years ago, I mean, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, but let's just focus now on Canada. I mean, I've never been to Canada, but from other people's testimonials, stories, documentaries, even like, it wasn't a documentary by Michael Moore. He went to Canada. He compared like the people, the mentality of Canadians and the people from the US, from the United States. The people in Canada are more, let's just say, are more relaxed. They let the door open. They leave the door open. They're more open-minded. I would just, this is just my my reflection now. But it was always like countries like Canada, Australia, like, oh, these would be the countries that we would emigrate to. This is like shocking to me. It's like 180 degrees, like upside down everything. It's really horrible. It's shocking. I mean, I'm still having a hard time digesting this whole thing, what's going on right now at the rate of speed that is going on.
It feels like a bad dream, I think, and you just keep hoping you're going to wake up from this dream and that things are going to go back to normal. And it's a hard reality to swallow that it's not just going back to the way it was. And if it was, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, when you were talking, I was thinking about how my grandparents on both sides came to Canada after World War II.
Yeah.
They came to find a new life, to find more freedom. And now, like 50, 60 years later, it's been turned upside down. So
okay, let's talk about El Salvador. Well, how do you guys feel? I mean, just the feeling of it, just living there. And I mean, are you guys relaxed, and are you optimistic? Is it like, with this whole, let's say, political structure with Bukele, and and I talked to the two people who from El Salvador, that is it something that you are striving for? You can imagine like living for for a, let's say, foreseeable future over there.
One thing I want to mention before we talk about that is just that we had said we left Canada for Mexico, and I just wanted to clarify that we lived in Mexico for over 7 months, traveling around Mexico until we came to El Salvador later.
Oh, really? How was that?
It was great. We love Mexico.
Yeah.
And so if you don't mind, I'll just like quickly touch on that. So we left Canada. We went to Mexico not knowing what we were going to do. We had no residency or anything like that. So we just treated it like a vacation at the beginning. We took our girls and we tried to take them on tourist attractions and visit zoos and go snorkeling and these kinds of fun activities.
Ruins.
Yeah, Mayan ruins and all these things. And we tried to treat it like, this is fun. This is an adventure, right? Like, because they're going through this difficult experience of leaving their school, leaving their friends, all this stuff. And so it was like, let's make this a fun adventure. And so we moved around. We traveled like through 4 states in Mexico. And then we ran out of time on our 180-day tourist visa. So we were like, well, what are we going to do? Either we couldn't apply for residency because Mexico kind of like forces you to go back to your home country to apply for residency, and which wasn't an option for us at the time. I mean, you can go to other countries, but it's pretty hard without going to your home country. And so we were like, well, we got to go somewhere. And so that was when El Salvador had dropped the COVID restrictions, and they had made Bitcoin legal tender just, in the fall of 2021. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, El Salvador, interesting. Because I had become a Bitcoiner recently. I was on my way to becoming a Bitcoiner anyways. I was, interested in crypto and reading stuff about it. And so now we had this interest in going to El Salvador, and we needed to go somewhere. So I suggested to Emily, why don't we go to El Salvador for a month or two and then come back to Mexico and live in Mexico again. And yeah, so we came in May of 2022, this past year, to El Salvador, and ended up loving it, and ended up deciding to apply for residency here. And we ended up going back to Mexico and to Canada for my sister's wedding, which is a whole nother story we could get into about our legal troubles with the Canadian government because of that visit. But we ended up coming back here in September to live, and we now have residency. And yeah, we're loving life in El Salvador. We can see a future here. With the current trajectory of the country, if it continues in the direction it's going, we think there's amazing potential and opportunity, and I could see us living here for decades if things keep going the way they are.
Yeah. And as far as the residency, we've had a guy, Jeremy, he's from the States, and he's been very helpful for us getting our residency, and same with Ryan and Jessica. So yeah, if anybody needs help that way, we can recommend him highly.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Escape to El Salvador is the company that's helping a lot of our friends and fellow expats get residency here. So he can help you. You can find him on Twitter at El Salvador Visas.
And one thing that we noticed when we were here in May and June was that most people, pretty much all the people that you find here coming from, Canada, Germany, wherever they're coming from, unless they're like just here to surf for a week or two, they were coming here to explore the freedom and the Bitcoin aspect of things in El Salvador.
Yeah.
So we connected with a lot of great people that way.
You guys have a permanent or temporary? How does it work? Temporary. Is that 1 year and then you can extend it easily?
1 year, and then we have to renew for 3 years before you get permanent.
Could you share a little bit more, like let's say, you guys, do you guys want to have a work, like a job, or do you want to also establish a business over there? Or
yeah, so like right now, so I had to leave my job, but then I ended up getting work with the same company I used to be an employee for. They contacted me later and asked if I could come back on a contract consulting basis, and so I've been working for them. So I'm a digital nomad. I work remotely, and because of that, I was able to qualify for the independent worker visa. It's like basically a digital nomad visa. You just need to make $1,500 US per month. But if you have dependents like a spouse and kids that aren't making income, you have to make, I think, $2,500 US per month to qualify. And so it's pretty straightforward. It's not difficult threshold to meet. But yeah. So sorry, what was it? I missed the question. I got off track there.
Because we were thinking, because my girlfriend has a shop, she has a business. She's more into botanical stuff, so we were thinking all kinds of brainstorming, at that time, should we buy a property, should we rent it, what if we want to establish a business, open up a shop or a company or something like that, or maybe go into a corporation with. So these are all maybe just two specific questions right now for you guys. No. But anything you can share for our listeners, like what?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We know people that have come here. There's two types of visas you can get. One's the digital nomad, independent worker one. The other one is if you want to come here and start a business. And so my understanding is it's the same sort of thing, but rather than having to prove income, you say that you're expecting to make certain amount of income, and we know people who've started businesses and they're not making any money yet, and they have qualified for temporary residency. with the plan to start a business, and it could be a brick and mortar business on the ground here, or it could be an online business. But that lots of people are getting residency that way as well. So if you wanted to come here and start a business and doing whatever you want, I think that's a very feasible option.
Yeah. And eventually we have plans to hopefully start sort of like an Airbnb
Yeah.
on the property that we're
Awesome.
in the process of purchasing.
Yeah, so we recently bought property, like half an acre, like in the mountains, kind of close to the coast. It's a beautiful spot, and we have this vision of building like rental cabins up there overlooking the ocean and
harvest coffee, or
yeah, we could grow coffee there. It's
the land has mango trees, avocado trees,
oh, beautiful,
coconut
gorgeous.
trees.
It's cool. It's amazing. Like when you come from Canada, cold climate, and you're used to having to grow tomatoes in a greenhouse because it's so cold, and you can only grow stuff for 4 months of the year. To come here where things grow 12 months of the year, and you're just like picking fruit off the trees.
Yeah.
It's so nice. It's so like the potential to grow your own food is incredible. So yeah, we eventually want to move to like our own business on the ground here. But right now I'm just doing the remote work thing.
Yeah, we're very nature connected. I mean, we're totally surrounded by forests, and there are some cows we can always see from the other farmers. I mean, we're not farmers, but we do we do intend to, if we ever establish ourselves in a warm country, to have our own goats and sheep and chickens and stuff like that. So
that's also our dream.
Yeah. So we're on the top of the hill, but as you said, the climate, the weather, it's just, I mean, I myself, I was born in Persia, and I came to Austria when I was 7 years old, but like permanently, like long time horizon, I think we all love, we would love to just live in a country where it's, let's say, more or less warm, or I don't mind tropical or even hot climate. I'm used to it.
Right.
Especially I also lived in California for 5 years, so that makes a whole different perception and quality of life. So how do you perceive, like, because as you know, it's just so much propaganda, and by so-called opposition parties and mainstream media or other media. How do you perceive this whole media, or because there's a lot of FUD and a lot of lies? Do you feel like really safe? Do you want to talk about it? Like, what's the perception? Like, how do you feel over there?
I feel incredibly safe here. We've never had a single negative experience where we felt in danger. I mean, when we first got here, I remember feeling pretty nervous because there had just been some gang violence a month before we came, and it made the news all over the world, and so we were quite nervous. But after a couple of weeks of being here, driving around, walking around, we were like, okay, it feels pretty normal, pretty safe, not any different than Mexico. And we never had any problems in Mexico either. We felt very safe in all the places we went to in Mexico. But yeah, like I feel totally safe. We walk around with our kids, and in the city and towns here, and I mean, a lot of people do live in gated communities. We live in a gated community, and there's security here, so I mean that helps. But even like when we go out, we feel safe. I do. I don't know, Emily.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably certain parts of the city of San Salvador I wouldn't walk alone or with my 3 little girls in, but it's the same back in Canada, right? In fact, the crime rates here right now are, there's less homicides per day than there are in many cities in Canada. So
it's amazing. Yeah. Do you have like the trust? Do you feel this feeling of trust towards Bukele and his team? Because this was a question we were always discussing with my girlfriend. Like, what if Bukele is gone? I mean, there's no guarantee for anything. I mean, if I were Bukele, and he seems to me the person, the human being with a different ethos. If I were his place, I would like, okay, my mission would be to make myself and the whole political structure obsolete, because by that time, would it be in 10, 20, 30 years, there'll be so many like circular economies, Bitcoin cities, so much, prosperity and abundance evolving that it's just a total different, evolution. It's an evolutionary stage where, do you really need the state anymore? Do you need the government, or is it going to be all like decentralized? Do you know where I'm going with this? Like, is there a vision for you guys? How this could evolve?
Or is there a vision for us as to like how El Salvador could evolve?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I've thought about it that deeply, but like to go back to your original question about like, do we trust Bukele and that? I don't trust any politicians fully, but I feel like Emily's just going to just wake up the kids and put a show on them so we can continue on after. But yeah, so I don't fully trust any politicians, but I feel like we're in a situation right now in the world where you have to make the best choice you can. And a person can say, well, I wouldn't trust Bukele, I wouldn't trust politicians in El Salvador, but are you going to trust the politicians in Canada? Are you going to trust the politicians in Europe? Are you going to, like, where are you going to live? So, I think you have to make the best choice you can. And for us, that's El Salvador. And I have more reason to trust the government here than I do to trust the government anywhere else, because at least they're taking steps in the right direction. They're doing good things for their country, right? Like the country is safer than it's been ever. It is it's taking, like, as far as us Bitcoiners are concerned, we think they're making incredible strides in terms of giving the population access to sound money, and also banking the country that's 70% unbanked, right? 70% of people here didn't have bank accounts or still don't. And they're leapfrogging that legacy financial system that has kept them out of accessing digital payments, and now they have Bitcoin wallets on their phones. And so, a lady running a pupusa stand here, which is like, their favorite food in El Salvador, who's making a few bucks a day, is able to do digital payments on her Bitcoin wallet, which before she had to operate in cash only. And, and there's risks that come with that. Now you can, so, I mean, I feel like what the government's doing here is incredible, and I'm very supportive of it. But yeah, I don't know that I can fully trust them. I feel like we have to make the best choice we can.
Yeah. So do you think the conditions are right now so mature that it has accelerated this process of attracting, as also, Samson Mao, from Jan 3, always, talks about, like, you need to, let money be money, and you need to, accelerate the economy. You have to create the conditions for the economy and attract investors, entrepreneurs, capital, talents, skills, talented people, engineers, scientists, people in the construction business. I mean, from every field, from every level we can think of. Do you see that? Do you see that accelerated process of attracting all these people, all these, resources, the knowledge pool, the talents, the skills? Do you see that?
Yes, that I do. And I'm glad you asked that question in the way you did, because it's been really interesting. We've had a lot of gatherings lately, like over Christmas and New Year's, and we have a fantastic Bitcoin community here, both in San Salvador and also on the coast near Bitcoin Beach. But we had many gatherings over the holidays where I was introduced to new people who were coming, and it's incredible listening to the people the talent they're bringing and the experience they're bringing. It's such varied backgrounds, right? Like different healthcare professionals and business people and people who've run restaurants and people who've worked in high up government military positions, and like people are bringing all financial backgrounds, tech backgrounds. There's all kinds of skill sets coming here, and I think that all these people want is the economic conditions and the economic freedom to be able to build things and contribute positively to a country's future. And all that governments need to do is say, like, plant that flag, kind of like Bukele did, where he said, I'm planting the freedom flag here in El Salvador. We're going to allow you to come here and build your business, and you can set up your business in Bitcoin City eventually and not pay any tax, like no income tax, no property tax, no capital gains tax, all these things. And so I think a lot of people are attracted to that. And a lot of talented people are saying, why do I want to live in Canada or Europe and pay 50% of my income in taxes? And you're getting less and less from these benefits. I was talking about this with my sister recently about how, if you're in our position, you feel like you're not getting any value for your tax dollars. You are being denied healthcare in lots of ways, being denied life-saving surgeries, can't access certain clinics, can't visit in our province. I believe you still can't visit your sick relatives in the hospital. We don't agree with the schooling system and the agenda that's being pushed. So we pay for public schools that we can't use. There's all these things that you're paying for. And like for instance, we're being taken to court by the Canadian government for refusing to give them our personal information when we flew back to Canada. So like Canadian tax dollars are going to pursue court cases against people like us, right? And so more and more you're like, what am I paying for? Why am I giving 50% of my income to an insane government that uses that money in this way? And so if a government like El Salvador can create that opportunity for people to come and feel that the government's actually working in their interest, I just think it's attracting so many people. And I think the wave of people moving here is just beginning, because I think the people who have come so far, although there's quite a few of us, we're sort of the pioneers and the people who were crazy enough to do it. But now that there's people like Nikki and James and Two People in Paradise and others who are making videos and podcasts and talking about it, and like, yourself interviewing people here, it's showing people outside of El Salvador what life is like here, and that it is safe, and we do enjoy life here. We do see a future here. And all of a sudden, what was such a scary thing is now becoming a realistic option for people in developing countries, because they see that it's not as scary as their government makes it out to be. So I think the future is super bright here.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people show interest and, reach out to us because of our Twitter posts or maybe my blog posts and different things. So yeah, there are definitely a lot of people in Canada and many other countries that are thinking seriously about leaving.
Yeah. And I think, because a lot of people, I mean, it's just natural. People have fears, fear of the fear and anxiety and insecurities. And as you said, in the beginning, it's complicated. It's difficult to, especially if you have interdependencies, you have maybe family to provide for, you have, you have different conditions. And then pack your stuff and go to a different country without knowing, what can you expect? It might be possible. It's always realistic, to go for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, but then you cannot plan ahead. But, for me, my feeling, my perception is that I'm totally optimistic. I'm totally with you, with both of you. It's like, I'm so optimistic. And so the future of El Salvador and other, countries who will replicate it in a similar, identical fashion, it's going to create abundance. It's going to, create exactly that, what also Jeff Booth always has been preaching about, like this will finally people will have more time. They can finally, you can, I'm totally for homeschooling, like you probably know Daniel Prince. He's like the guru of homeschooling. Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of, of his, sharing his thoughts on homeschooling and free the mind of the children, because these are, if you don't start with the children with their free and creative mind and their spirit and their, let's just say spirituality, even, it's maybe even beyond our imagination, what is possible once this generation grows up. They're going to laugh. In 10, 20 years, people, the kids are now growing up, they're going to laugh and they're going to go and say, this is crazy. What, beginning with the money, with the fiat money and central banking structures and everything else, but because there are consequences to that, right? There are collateral damages, unbelievable collateral damages, and then on top of that, this whole agenda that is being played, in plain sight, right? With whatever they want to call them, WEF, Davos, or one one world order, or whatever you want to call it, but it's and I think more and more countries will replicate this model of El Salvador, and that's makes me happy. Yeah.
I think if El Salvador can stay the course, which it being a Bitcoin bear market makes it more challenging, right? Because it's easy for people to sling mud at Bukele and the government here and say, like, you read the hit pieces in the New York Times, and not that I read them, but I see the headlines posted that El Salvador's failed Bitcoin experiment and all these things. And it's so funny to hear those things and read those things, because when you're here on the ground, you're like, okay, they have 25% of vendors in the country accepting Bitcoin. Like, do people not realize how mind-blowingly successful that is? That's probably 1,000 times more than any other country on earth. And it's a huge accomplishment for 1 year for a developing nation to get that much adoption. And obviously there's struggles. There are lots of, technical issues and things to sort out. Like, this is a whole new financial system. You have different Lightning wallet providers and, different hardware wallets and different software wallets, and everybody's interacting with a government app and interacting with vendor software. Like, there's so many moving parts here, and somebody described it like it's like we're trying to fix the airplane while the plane's flying, that kind of a thing, right? And that's kind of what it is. It's on the fly, where the whole country's learning as it goes, and the Bitcoiners here get to be a part of it. Like, you get to be there and you get to help the cashier store learn how to use the Lightning wallet so that they can accept your payment. And each of us has a part to play in that, but it's exciting to be a part of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, the motives. I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't have to understand that, whether it be the incentives or just saving faces, because I think there's a lot of, like, it's a paradigm shift, and then being forced to admit that, oh my God, I've been wrong. Would it be, in the fiat academic world? I think Safeda Namus is the best to talk about this. It's just I think a lot of saving faces or just incentives, but eventually, the cat is out of the bag. It's just a matter of time until everything, becomes smoother, interoperable, and even, more efficient, faster, and easier, I mean, Jan 3 is going to come out, hopefully, next few months, with a new, relaunch of the Aqua wallet, which even, our grandmas could handle. It's going to be that easy. Would it be, Bitcoin Lightning stablecoin, which is, again, they even admitted themselves, it's just a transitory thing, and then it will vanish because you won't need it anymore. Because once eventually Bitcoin, hopefully, going to be the unit of account, not only store of value, medium of exchange, but unit of account, and then you think totally different. You think in purchasing power, and that's going to be mind-blowing. Then you will definitely, be able to, whatever, in 10, 20, 30 years, to buy a big yacht with 0.001 Bitcoin. So, and this is what I see in El Salvador. I think it's going to attract so much capital, so much resource, so much skills, talents, brains, engineers, inventors, new technological innovation, which could not be because of all this patent system, because of the military industrial complex, because of the this compartmentalized structures everywhere. I see El Salvador as a country where a relaunch, a rebirth of all this technological innovation, whether it be energy, transportation, medicine, healing. I mean, anything you can think of, which we could have had probably in the last 100 years, because I've been reading a lot of stuff. And even Safeda Namus is going to tell you that. I mean, why are we still having propulsion systems that that burn, that have combustion systems? Why can't we travel faster, more efficient, more more clean, if you want? So I'm I'm super optimistic. This is why, this is why I want to talk, also have, listen to your thoughts. Like, where do you see El Salvador with the people, with the comfort, with the prosperity and abundance in, let's say, 10 to 20 years? I mean, this is the potential I see in El Salvador and other countries to follow.
Yeah, I see. I mean, I believe in the future of Bitcoin. I believe that the price is going to be considerably higher in 5 or 10 years. And I think that it's actually interesting right now being here in a bear market, because I think a lot of the local people don't see the value of it. They don't see the value of saving it. So although they might accept payments in Bitcoin, it's instantly converted to US dollars on their wallet. And I don't blame them for wanting to do that, because like if you're only making $500 a month or something like that, you can't afford volatility, right? And Bitcoin has been very volatile, and it's been volatile in the down direction over the past 6 months or almost a year. So if if you can't afford to lose 50% of your money in the short term, then like people can't afford to take that risk. But I see really positive signs happening here. Like, one thing gives me a ton of hope for the future of El Salvador is there's these educational programs that I know of, like an organization here called My First Bitcoin, or in Spanish, it's Mi Primer Bitcoin. And they go around the country educating high school students on what Bitcoin is, how to use it, how to download a Lightning wallet. And I think they give them a few dollars worth of Bitcoin. And these kids are excited about it, and they get it, and they are going to be the future, right? So you might have some 60, 70-year-old vendor on the street who's like, I don't want to get Bitcoin. I don't care about this virtual currency. I think it's a Ponzi scheme. But you have this younger generation, right, that's growing up with it and adopting it. And I think they're going to see the value of it. And so I think if El Salvador can stay the course, I think that the future is really bright and I know some young people here who are already stacking sats and starting to save and see the value of it, and they get it. They get that the price goes up and down. And there's a lot of people trying to do education here. And we just met a few guys last night. We were doing a live stream, and I wish I could remember the name of their podcast. I think it's called the Bitcoin Podcast El Salvador, or something like that. And they're doing the first that I know of, the first Spanish language Bitcoin education podcast, teaching locals about Bitcoin and why they should save in it.
And they just came back here in the last couple of years from China. They were living in, at least the one guy was living in China, right?
Yeah, they'd gone there years ago, like 8 years ago, but long before COVID stuff started happening. But yeah, there's so many people coming back here. That's exciting. That's exciting to watch. Like the expat community, like people who have left El Salvador, because there's millions of Salvadorans living in the United States, some in Canada, and all over the world, and who fled because times were so bad here. And now to see hundreds of those people coming back, like it's probably in the thousands. We've met dozens ourselves.
Yeah, even in this little community that we live in.
Yeah, in our community right here, we meet people all the time who speak fluent English, who move back from the United States because they're so positive on what's happening here. And that tells you so much about the direction of a country when people who could be living in the United States or in Canada are saying, hey, I actually think it's better in El Salvador. I'm going back.
Wow. I mean, this is like the proof. I mean, so much encouragement and empowerment. Yeah. When we hear stories like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, I mean, before we wrap up here, I mean, to go back to Canada's situation, I mean, people think, it's like, okay, this is like in Canada, it could happen anywhere, right? All these restrictions and dictatorial measures and everything it's mind blowing. What's going on? I mean, it seems to be like the plan is like to roll this out, right, globally. I mean, do you see like a parallel universe, like a parallel societies evolving, like starting in El Salvador and other South America, Latin American and African countries? Is that what you see? Maybe.
I hope so. I
hope so too.
I think. Okay, so one thing I want to mention, and let me get back on track here with the hopeful message, but I think it's important to ask yourself, like, when you see, say, Canada's government doing tyrannical things, tyrannical behaviors, like when they froze the bank accounts of the peaceful protesters, or the people who donated to the peaceful protest, ask yourself, like, where were the leaders of your country? Were they criticizing Justin Trudeau? Were they calling him out? Because typically, you would expect them, if they don't agree with something, that they would call it out and say, hey, this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But almost no one, I think Bukele was one of the only world leaders that I saw who actually, I mean, there were a few politicians in Europe or other places, but not leaders, not
No,
national
just
leaders calling them out.
just a handful.
So okay, if you have a similar situation in your country, then what are your leaders going to do? And I suspect that similar things will happen in Europe, and we could go on a whole rabbit trail about CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and how those are being developed all over the world, and they're going to give all kinds of power to governments to to basically restrict your freedoms and take them away. And so yeah, I would say that if you're in a developed country, it's especially dangerous because it's just so much more advanced down that path. Whereas in a developing country, I think it's less likely to happen. It's just not there yet, technologically speaking. And
Yeah.
But as far as like seeing a future of parallel societies, parallel economies, I really hope that that's the case. And I don't know that it's gonna be countries that lead the way. Like I wanted to mention this earlier, like when I went to the Adopting Bitcoin conference here in San Salvador in November, there were some awesome presentations from different projects happening around the world. So there's here the Bitcoin is happening like top down, right? The government is spearheading it, but it started out with a bottom up movement, right? It was Bitcoin Beach and El Zonte that inspired the country to do that. And similar projects are happening. Like Bitcoin Beach has inspired projects all over the world. So in South Africa, in Guatemala, in Costa Rica, there's the Bitcoin project happening in Honduras and Prospera. There's all kinds of projects happening, and they're happening from the ground up. And so I hope that will inspire similar things like it did in El Salvador, where the government will see the value of that and support it. But it may not. It might need to be a bottom-up movement, right? And it may need to be just the people doing it, kind of, even without the support of their government. And I think we need to do that. I think we need to create that parallel economy, whether or not the government is supportive of it. We need to, all of us need to start using Bitcoin, start sending payments to each other in Bitcoin, start using Lightning wallets. And, like if you're transferring $20 to your friend to pay them back for dinner, use Bitcoin, use Lightning. Don't use your bank.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, just as hodling it. I mean, hodling, saving, hodling. It's that's a self-explanatory thing to do, right? Because it's a long-term horizon, it's a low-time preference thing to do. But we need to interact, we need to transact, we need to educate and make people comprehend. And and you're spot on. I think it needs both. I think that. Prince Philip of Serbia, the Jan 3 CSO, he always talks about, he's very humble, the way he describes it, says, we need both. We need bottom up and a little bit, top down approach. So where they meet in the middle somewhere, the way I understand it. And I think, you talked about CBDCs. Do you think the CBDCs, because there's already a certain level of awareness, the dangers, of CBDCs, do you think it could actually accelerate? I mean, think about Nigeria. Didn't they try to introduce this, whatever their version of central bank digital currencies, their Sango coin or whatever, and then all of a sudden people flock to Bitcoin. Do you see is that does it have the opposite effect, that it could actually accelerate hyper-Bitcoinization?
It might, but I still think it's such a small percentage of the population that actually is aware of Bitcoin and understands what central bank digital currencies really are. I really think that probably 80% of the population is clueless, as a lot of people are NPCs who are watching Netflix and watching the sports ball game and couldn't care less about what's happening. And if the government tells them that, oh, we had a financial crisis and we're going to fix it now, all you have to do is download this new great wallet app that's going to be super secure and make everything better for you. And oh, as a bonus, we're going to give you $1,000 when you download your new CBDC app. I think 90% of people will probably download it and go along with it.
But on the same line, I think it depends on the country, right? Because it seems like a lot of people in countries like, countries coming out of communism just in the last 20 years are a lot more awake and alert to government control. And we've seen that in the last few years, that the countries that are most resistant to vaccine mandates, lockdowns, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Are
They've
those
experienced it, right? They just know what's going to come next, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like, I think Emily makes a really good point there, that there might be places that will resist this harder because they understand, but like, to see the gullibility of Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, and much of Europe, I think it's these places that have had things so good, so easy since World War II, maybe. Think they haven't really had a lot of big challenges to face as countries, and it's been easy to trust your government because it's just been like an upward slope of prosperity and economic growth, and government providing more and more stuff, even though it was through inflation and borrowed money. They've kind of managed to do that, create this illusion of prosperity, right? And I think the piper has to be paid eventually, right? And we're going to see that coming, as I'm sure over the next like 5-10 years. We're probably going to see government's going to have to pay for all these promises that they can't keep through inflation, money printing, and my hope is that will accelerate the move to hyper Bitcoinization, like you said. And I mean, I don't know how it will pan out. I mean, none of us do, but my hope is that people will wake up as their purchasing power is being destroyed. You hear more and more discussion, even amongst like normal people, about inflation and how it's a big concern amongst voters, and so that is an opportunity. I mean, it's a tough time to orange pill people when the Bitcoin price is down 60-70% or whatever it is, but at the same time, it's like the people who are willing to hear it, willing to listen, open to new ideas. I think now is a time when they might be looking for solutions, right, to protect their purchasing power. And if you can convince them of that long-term game, right, of why Bitcoin's going to hold your purchasing power long-term, and to ignore the short-term volatility, I think we have a chance to really accelerate Bitcoin adoption.
Yeah, and I'm with you with that. The timing is a little bit peculiar, but it's because the pain point has been reached in a lot of segments or demographies of societies. The pain point of whatever the loss of purchasing power, the hardship that people are going through, would it be especially in developed countries. And you said, that this is what I'm concerned about. But again, I'm still still realistic, optimistic. It's just we don't need a majority of people. We just need a critical mass. And I'm totally convinced we will reach Bitcoin adoption by, let's say, 2024, 25, at least 1 billion people. I mean, would you say that's realistic? I mean, once we have that, whatever percentage of the Earth's population, if that is that of the 8 billion people, I think this is what will trigger the chain reaction, and then we can forget all these people, who are like totally brainwashed, indoctrinated, sitting in front of their TV and watching whatever they were watching, and being, bombarded with all this, stupidity by mainstream media. I mean, it's a form of mind control. But even if it's just like 3, 4, 5% of the Earth's population, that's it. I mean, would it be in special zones or countries, distributed or not? But is that what you see? I mean,
like what I thought that came to my mind when you were speaking was like this 1 billion people adopting Bitcoin. I think we are on track. I've seen statistics that show that we're on track for that. And but what really excites me is this idea that, okay, we have these Bitcoin local economies developing. So there's El Salvador has a lot of adoption. There's Bitcoin Lake in Guatemala is seeing a lot of adoption. Bitcoin Jungle in Costa Rica. You have these pockets around the world. The Bitcoin Island in the Philippines, I saw a presentation from them. But think about when these isolated local Bitcoin economies start to grow to a point where they're like connected and interacting with each other. And now you have like a traveler coming from El Salvador going to Guatemala, and they're moving from one Bitcoin economy to another. And I think as these local economies grow and get bigger, that circle widens, they're going to start to overlap. And I feel like Central America might be the ground zero for where this is happening, because all these projects seem to be happening here. There's talk of Mexico making Bitcoin legal tender. I know it's not that sure yet, but there's politicians talking about it, and the southern U.S. and Texas and down there in Florida, there's a lot of talk about Bitcoin. And so I think that, yeah, there's the potential for these local economies to grow and then overlap, and then that's where you see this acceleration when those start interacting with each other. So I think the potential is huge. Yeah. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, Emily. Yeah. Well, why don't you close
I
up?
was just I was just thinking we're actually going to Costa Rica soon,
Awesome.
for a few weeks. So, it's exciting to see what's happening there as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there. Who's there? Let me see. Isn't there
Francis Pulio from Bull Bitcoin?
There are quite a few people over there. Even Alex Svetsky, wasn't it? Isn't it Costa Rica? Maybe I'm confusing, but I think there a few really prominent Bitcoiners live there, or like permanently.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. We're hoping to check out Bitcoin Jungle over there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I mean, your pool of inspiration and empowerment and encouragement for a lot of people. This talk, other talks that you've given, interviews. So, any final thoughts, or what do you want to share? Your Twitter handles, your blog, maybe even, Emily.
Yeah, I have a blog, a Substack. It's called Life Lessons from Abroad, and yeah, if anyone's interested in following our journey or hearing what we're up to here, about getting residency or anything like that. And yeah,
and I'm on Twitter. I'm somewhat active on there. My Twitter handle is @menscoach_Tom. And I guess final thoughts. I just wanted to, well, first off, you can reach out to either one of us on Twitter. Emily's on Twitter too. I don't know her Twitter handle, but
Emily ML, or sorry.
Don't worry. You can contact me, and I can. Yeah, we can put it in the show notes.
Yes.
But we're happy to answer any questions. Our mission right now is to help as many people escape tyrannical governments as possible and live a more free life. And so anything we can do that, we want to help. But final thoughts. I would just say that if you are living in a developed nation, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, one of these places where you see the government encroaching on your freedoms more and more, I know it's a scary thought to think about leaving, to leave friends and family, to maybe make a career change, or to sell your house, take a chance. It's a scary thought. We know that well. We've experienced it, and I would just say that, you have to really want to make it work. You have to decide if it's the right step for you. If personal freedom is so valuable that you're willing to sacrifice those other things. And I would just say that I would encourage you to make a trip and explore other parts of the world while you can, because we have that freedom to travel again. Most of us do, and to go and check out other places. And I would encourage anybody who's curious about El Salvador or Central America to come and visit and see that it's not scary, because the mainstream media makes you fearful of it. And we were fearful of coming to El Salvador, but the people are so warm and welcoming, and you will not feel in danger if you come to El Salvador. And I would just encourage people to get out of their comfort zone and go see with your own eyes. Don't believe the media. Because I just read that Canada issued a increased travel warning for El Salvador, heightened risk or something like that. And I think they're trying to scare people away. Like, Canada sees a huge exodus. I heard from a very reliable source that Canada's getting concerned about the increased exodus of Canadians to El Salvador. And so I think that travel warning was related to that. And so they're trying to scare you from leaving. They want their tax slaves to stay there and continue feeding the beast. And you need to live your own life and make your own decisions, and not fall for their propaganda anymore.
Yeah. And also, if you're considering coming to El Salvador or Mexico or wherever, start learning Spanish.
Exactly. It's a pretty easy language. I mean, compared to other languages, for example, German.
Right, exactly. There's Duolingo. There's lots of different ways to learn it, but Duolingo is just an easy free one to start with.
Yeah.
And also get some low fee credit cards if you're going to travel.
Yeah. And, you know, going back to the roots of Bitcoin, I mean, isn't that fantastic? Just, you know, you could liquidate everything, put everything into Bitcoin, put it whatever into your head, or, you know, and just go anywhere. And you are, you know, you can't be confiscated, you can't be seized, you can't be found. It's like poof, you know, you're gone. It's never been possible in human history. I mean, this is something people should be really thinking about, you know, when the situation gets serious, right?
Yeah, that's such an important thing, I think, to emphasize to people when you're trying to educate them on Bitcoin, why it's important. And, you know, because people hear this virtual money, but to have that freedom to be able to get on a plane with nothing, not even a suitcase, and to have your life savings there in your head it's an incredibly powerful thing for individual sovereignty.
Yeah. Well, we want to, I mean, we can't make plans at the moment, but we're really looking forward to meeting you guys in El Salvador. Would it be in 1 year or in half a year? We don't know, but we'll let you know. It would be awesome if our families could meet.
Yeah, I'd love to.
You know, I mean, I have a dream, I have a sort of a vision, but maybe we can, you know, discuss it sometime privately. It has to do with sort of a holistic resort. And, you know, because it needs, I think humanity is now mature enough, you know, to go beyond their perception and their consciousness. And, you know, I think this is the time, it's a paradigm shift, you know, because either we're going into slavery or into pure freedom and expanding our consciousness and empathy and civilizational evolution, if you want to call it that. So yeah, so it's a own rabbit hole by itself. So Tom, Emily, thank you so much again. I really appreciate that, and thanks for sharing your thoughts and your experience and your values, you know, and your spirit.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Definitely.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Kayvan. Thank you for inviting us on your show. It's been such a pleasure, and you are welcome at our place anytime. If you come to El Salvador, get in touch. We'd love to have your family.
Yeah, since you're gonna, you know, start an Airbnb, we're gonna be your guest, definitely.
Yeah, and we'll show you around El Salvador.
Definitely. Okay. Tom, Emily, have a great day.
You too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.